when the world is in crisis
การแก้ไขปัญหาโควิดถือเป็นวาระแห่งชาติ
and people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.
สวัสดีค่ะ Very good evening and welcome to our 7 o'clock news Thai PBS World tonight. I am Natha Gomonwadin.
And good evening, I'm Premchai. And in the sign that things are moving more and more back to normalcy, starting this Thursday, all schools across the country will return to their normal class sizes. That means the classes no longer have to be divided as part of the social distancing measures, and no more classes having to be held on alternative days as in the past 2 months. So that means that we are moving closer to normalcy now.
Yeah, so that's good news for students and teachers. And also good news regarding COVID-19 is 2 days in a row of no new local transmission, and it has been 78 consecutive days of no local transmission. So that's good news for Thailand.
All right, so good news, good news. Hope we will keep things that way. All right, tonight we'll start on the political front. The political rally at the Rangsit campus of the Thammasat University last night was certainly the biggest anti-government protest since the military took power in 2014. Thousands of people, mostly students, turned up for the event. But what set the Thammasat rally apart from earlier demonstrations was not only the size of its attendance, but it was the demand put forward by the protest leaders that has set up alarm bells. For the first time, protest leaders have set the reforming of the royal institution to the list of their demands. It triggered a storm of angry reactions from people who see the protester as having crossed the line. Even the Prime Minister, General Premchai, today admitted that he was disturbed by the Thammasat protest, while Senator Somchai Sawangkan held the management of the Thammasat University responsible for allowing the students to use the campus to slander the monarchy. Somchai told Thai PBS World that he believes that some political groups have been behind the student protest. The Thammasat rally followed a series of smaller demonstrations across the country to echo demand that the constitution be revised, the parliament be dissolved, and for an end to what the protesters see as the harassment of critics of Vorayuth government by state authorities. The protester ended the rally last night with a 10-point demand that aimed specifically at the sweeping reform of the monarchy. Though earlier rallies had seen some protesters take on the royal institution, yesterday was the first time that a demand against the monarchy was openly made. The demand was issued in the name of a group calling itself Thammasat and Protest Alliance. The series of protests in the past few weeks have been held under different banners, so it's not immediately clear whether the 10-point demand represents the stand of all the different protest groups. While saying he felt disturbed, Prime Minister Vorayuth declined to comment on the 10-point demand made by the protesters. Suvapan Tanyuwattana, chairman of the Senate Committee on the Protection of Royal Institutions, said, "What the protesters raised at the Thammasat rally has hurt the feelings of tens of millions of Thai people." He told Thai PBS World that there is a need for the government to sit down for a dialogue with the students to help them understand the history and the role of the monarchy. The students' concerns about the future, especially job prospects in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, should also be addressed, as they were one factor that prompted them to join the anti-government rallies, said Suvapan, a former minister of the Prime Minister's office. Among the protest leaders who took to the stage last night were Unknown Nampa and Panupong Jatnok, 2 activists who were taken into police custody late last week on charges of inciting public unrest. They were released on bail on the condition that they would not involve themselves in any more political rallies. Unknown, who is a human rights lawyer and a prominent figure at recent student rallies, declared that he was ready to be rearrested for violating his bail terms. He repeated his call for the monarchy to be reformed. The protester also had a video link with a staunch anti-monarchy activist who is in self-exile in Japan. Pavin Chachawan Pongpan, an associate professor at the Center for Southeast Asian Studies at Kyoto University, is wanted on lèse majesty charge and has also been one of the most outspoken critics of the military and the Vorayuth government. The rally yesterday also put a spotlight on the management of the university, which came under heavy criticisms for allowing the students to rally on its campus to attack the monarchy.
Prinya Thewa Narumitkun, a vice dean of Thammasat University, this morning came out to offer apology for the incident. He said in a Facebook post that he granted the students a permission to use the campus for the rally on the condition that adhere to their three basic demands. That is a rewriting of the constitution, a dissolution of the parliament, and an end to harassment of government critiques by state authorities. The students, he said, agreed to avoid touching on sensitive issues, a reference to the monarchy. Prinya explained that some of the speakers who are not Thammasat students, however, later took over the rally stage to discuss issues that many found to be offensive to the monarchy. Even though Thammasat University promotes freedom of expression, but it needs to be within the framework of the constitution and law, especially on issues that may create division within the society, he said. As the person who granted permission for the rally, Prinya said he wanted to apologize and take full responsibility for what happened. Prinya's apology was followed by a statement from Thammasat University, which blamed the anti-monarchy rhetoric during the rally on individual protesters. It also pledged to take action against its students who showed improper conduct and to impose strict regulations to ensure that the campus would not be used for activities that risk violating the law. Student activists in recent weeks have been increasingly vocal in their criticisms of the country's traditional establishment, especially the monarchy. They have launched a campaign for graduating students to boycott commencements which are normally presided over members of the royal family. Protest leaders plan another so-called flash mob at Lumpini Park tomorrow and have scheduled a major rally at the Democracy Monument on August the 16th.
Even the opposition MPs seem to have been taken aback by the demands made by the protester at Thammasat University last night. Some of them have come out to warn the students and the protester not to stop insulting the monarchy. And Kun Ying Sudarat Keyurapan, the chief strategist of Premchai, which is the main opposition party, warned the students that what they are doing in dragging the monarchy into the scene would only further worsen the political division in the country.
Yes, so that reaction from different stakeholders in this case of the protest which happened at Thammasat last night.
Okay. And now let's move on to the hit and run case involving the heir to the Red Bull business empire, Vorayuth Yuvithaya. The latest is that the public prosecutor, who has been at the center of the much publicized case, has resigned. And he said his decision to resign was to protect the image of the office of the Attorney General, which has come under heavy criticisms for its handling of the case. Kunnet Naksuk, a deputy attorney general, has been under the spotlight since he decided in June to drop the charge of reckless driving, resulting in death against Vorayuth. He claimed there was not sufficient evidence for the suspect to be prosecuted. Net's resignation comes less than 2 months before his mandatory retirement at the end of September. Under the law governing public prosecutors, Nate, who is 65, was in fact entitled to ask for an extension of his office term until he is 70. Nate reportedly insisted in his resignation letter that his decision not to have Vorayuth prosecuted was based on sound judgment and in accordance with the official guidelines. However, since the Office of the Attorney General has been under heavy pressure because of the case, he said he decided to call it quits to show his responsibility and in order to protect the image of the organization. Nate has not been seen in public since dropping the hit and run case and failed to show up for a hearing of a sub-panel assigned to examine his handling of the case last week. The Office of the Attorney General has asked police to launch a new investigation into the case while appointing a new panel to find out whether drug abuse charges could be filed against Vorayuth based on a medical finding that there was cocaine in his body system at the time of the incident. So this is another twist in the case, right? The public prosecutor who has been at the center of this case decided to call it quits today.
Yes, and another case which has been under spotlight by Thai public Premchai is about construction tycoon Premchai Kannasut, who was convicted of illegal possession of firearm. Today, appeal court has decided to uphold from the lower court. The appeal court today has upheld the 6-month prison sentence imposed by the lower court. Mr. Premchai Kannasut, president of Italian Thai Development Corp, was charged with possessing 3 hunting rifles and 1 muzzle-loading rifle without licenses. In upholding the criminal court's conviction, the appeals court dismissed his new defense, not raised in the lower court trial, that all the illegal firearms were inherited from his father. The court said that possession of illegal firearm is a serious offense and that it will be difficult for the authorities to track down offenders if the rifles were to be used in a crime. The court also dismissed Mr. Premchai's argument that he is very sick and the prison lacks a proper hospital to treat his illness, stating that there is a prison hospital and if the patient is very sick, he can be sent to a private hospital. After the reading of the appeal court's decision this morning, the tycoon was released on a 500,000 baht bail. On July 29th, the appeals court upheld a 1-year sentence imposed on Premchai by the criminal court for corruption and misconduct cases on bribery charges. In December last year, the appeals court handed 3 years and 2 months in prison to Mr. Premchai for illegal possession of wildlife carcasses, having firearms in a national park, and poaching. So that's the development of 2 cases under spotlight in Thailand, Premchai.
So these are among some of the long-running cases dealing with prominent figures in the society.
Yes. And regarding the massive explosion last week in Beirut of Lebanon, also the government has been under much pressure. And finally, they have announced to step down. So what's really the latest situation, Kunat?
Yeah, because the situation in Beirut with the explosion last week and the protests that have been going on for 3 straight days, the government has already resigned over these incidents. And so far, the protesters have taken the streets and clashed with the police. And many people have accused the leaders for their alleged negligence and corruption over the explosion. And the announcement of the resignation of the government was made by the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Hassan Diab, in a national TV address on Monday evening local time.
He must be under tremendous pressure.
Yes, a lot of pressure here because despite the incident that was going on with the protests and the explosion that happened last week, the country has already faced a lot of economic issues, and it's piling up And that became a lot of pressure for the government. So that is why they decided to resign.
That seems to be the best way out politically for the government.
Yes.
And what did he say exactly?
Okay, the prime minister said his government worked really hard to save the country, but because of the explosion in Beirut last Tuesday was a result of corruption that is bigger than the state. This is why they all decided to resign. And although the president, Michel Aoun, accepted the prime minister's resignation, he actually asked the prime minister and the government to stay on until the new cabinet is formed.
And so far, Beirut has been very much under effect, has
Yes.
been very much damaged by explosion. So how's the situation?
With the death toll from last week's explosion, it has already increased to 220, and it has damaged, like we've seen, the buildings in a radius of several kilometers in Beirut, leaving more than over 200,000 people homeless or living in homes with no windows or doors. And like we mentioned, the country is already suffering from economic issues before the incident. And officials also estimated that the explosion caused more than $3 billion of damages. And with the economic losses that Lebanon has already encountered, it may amount up to $15 billion. So with the incident that occurred last week and the economic losses that have been piling up for so many years, it would be up to 15 billion and probably might be much more than that.
Yeah, it's crisis within crisis because they are facing economic crisis and then COVID-19.
Yes, with all of this, Lebanon is actually in a very bad situation, not just with COVID-19, the explosion, the economic issues they're facing, and with the corruption, which has raised a lot of question marks among the protesters.
So what will happen next, because the Prime Minister has resigned and there will be caretaker government, what will happen?
After this time, the parliament will now have to decide on a prime minister. But this process is definitely not easy, and it's not going to be smooth or a quick process compared to other countries, because Lebanon has a very complicated political system to begin with, and that is pretty much the root of the disapproval from the protesters, because based on reports, power in Lebanon is shared between leaders representing the country's different religious groups. And apart from this, there are still a number of warlords entering politics and still controls large parts of the country's political, economic, and social sectors since the end of the civil war here. So because of the political system that is going on, which is very complicated here, rooted from religious issues, and with the civil war that ended like decades ago, many protesters believe that this system is actually the main reason of the country's corruption.
Well, explosion doesn't help at all. It makes the situation worsening for Lebanon.
Yes, it's really worsening. So we really have to see what happens from now on with the caretaker government and who will be the next prime minister to actually revive the whole situation, or at least make the situation a little bit better.
Tough call indeed.
Yes.
And what about development of other stories?
And just so you know, these are the stories we've also been following today.
Thailand found no new cases of COVID-19 for the second day today. The CCSA also reported that there are no local transmissions for 78 consecutive days. The total number of infections remain at 3,351, with 3 new recoveries and no new fatalities. The appeals court has upheld the 6-month prison sentence on construction tycoon Premchai, who was convicted of illegal possession of firearms.
Mr. Premchai was charged with possessing 3 hunting rifles and 1 muzzle-loading rifle without licenses. However, he was released on a 500,000 baht bail after the reading of the court's decision this morning. The family of missing Thai activist Wanchalerm Satsaksit and Amnesty International held a rally in front of the Cambodian embassy, demanding officials to find the missing activist and to prosecute the suspects involved with the abduction. They also celebrated the activist's birthday and gave out cakes and cookies to police officers around the embassy. Schools across Thailand will fully reopen this Thursday as the COVID-19 situation in the country is improving. The Office of Basic Education Commission has told schools to use classrooms as little as possible and to emphasize more outdoor activities. Students will also be required to keep a record of their whereabouts after school.
And in Hong Kong, Premchai, Nat, yesterday we saw how Jimmy Lai, the owner of Next Digital or the executive of Apple Daily, was arrested in the office. And it raised alarm among Hong Kongers. And today, Hong Kongers flocked to buy today's edition of Apple Daily with intention to support Apple Daily. So it raised the sales volume to more than 5 times for Apple Daily. So this report has more details.
In Hong Kong's working class Mong Kok district, people queued in the early hours at the newspaper store to get the first copies of the Apple Daily. A day after the pro-democracy paper was raided by police and its owner Jimmy Lai arrested under a new national security law. It was the latest police operation against dissidents under the sweeping new law and sparked a fresh round of condemnation over Hong Kong's stuttering freedoms. One of the residents said that, "I bought 16 copies of Apple's Daily and give them to authors. I'm afraid a lot of people can't get their copies to support Apple Daily and to support press freedom in Hong Kong."
香港報紙咧都係好似報導一啲政府想俾市民。
Another resident claimed that other Hong Kong newspapers only report what the government wants people to know, but Apple Daily discloses the truth in all different angles.
They even queued up at 2:30 last night not to want to miss this edition of Apple's Daily. And back to Thailand, right now we see how youth are having protests and it's quite gaining momentum. And last night they met at Thammasat University with new demand to the government. And right now we have Dr. Ekapan Pintawanit, Acting Director at Mahidol University's Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies, joining us in the studio. Good evening, สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I know you have been following the protests by the students, right?
That's right.
And last night's rally at Thammasat University in Rangsit was certainly the biggest anti-government protest since 2014.
That's right.
But what set off the alarm bells was the fact that all of a sudden, reforming the monarchy has been added to the list of demands by the protesters. Were you surprised by that?
The thing is, of course, I was surprised by the certain extent that this issue have been raised in this particular period of time, because the former petitions mostly are related to constitution drafting, elimination of intimidation and human rights violation, and also at the end expecting to dissolve the parliament. But this time the demand has been escalated into a certain very important institution of Thai political, social, and administration structure. So it brought some surprises to me.
Yes. Many people think that the protesters have crossed the line. Do you think they have done so?
The thing is, like personally, I still haven't really listened to all the how you call it, like the speaking of last night. But from the summary that I have read from several news, both like mainstream news and in the social media, the thing is like it is hard to say that whether it is crossing the line, but I would like to address certain principles. Actually, last time when I was here, I already mentioned that normally we discuss about the monarchy as usual, because the monarchy is one of the supreme social institutions of this country.
Yeah.
So when we discuss about like the rule of law, the relations in the social structure, so then we still have to mention about the monarchy, monarchy as an institution, right? And then, but the thing is like there are several issues from last night that are related to a certain extent of the personal, which is the monarch, not the monarchy. So the thing is like I have been trying to discuss with several academics today whether what kind of extent that people could be talking about the monarch. The thing is like we go back into the history, right? Even during the Buddhist era, very often when people want to address certain issues that are related to the monarch himself or herself, at certain points sometimes they use the technique of implication and also some kind of storytellings. Right? There are so many storytellings during the Lord Buddha's eras up until even in Thai history. So there are a lot of academics or those who are concerned with the issues trying to tell the stories to the concerned monarchs in the particular time. So then there are certain extents that the opinion could be delivered with certain extent of implication, and that's what had been done for so long. And then many of the implications are really on the friendly manner, not being the attack or attacking to the person very directly.
So you mean discussing the issue of the monarchy is not a taboo, but depends on how you do it.
Yes, it is how you do it. Okay. It is not something that is prohibited for discussion, because like as an institution, it's very important to discuss about that.
But under Thai law, it's also framed by Least Majesty law. And last night the discussion was openly debated on the stage. And right now, Thammasat, especially Rangsit campus and the management of Thammasat University has been under much criticism. And how do you see the venue like university should react or should be prepared? Because of course, the young students, young protesters are planning to stage their rally in different university campus.
The thing is like universities are places where the freedom of expression is the most concerned. So then I think we still have to really maintain such how you call that, mentality of it, or such belief, or just holding that value. But the thing is like there are certain ways to make the management of the script, for example, or I discussed with several of those who have been mobilizing demonstration in the past. Normally they can have the plot, what they are going to talk in certain period of time, or who is going to talk about what. So then I think to prevent from, because like some criticism might not be, how you call it, constitutionalized at this point. So then, because like at least the monarch is immune by the constitution, at least in this constitution. So then it is a caution that we have to, I mean, those demonstrators must be aware of this.
You know, in the eyes of many people, it looks like the table has been turned on the students now. So you think there's a need for the student, the protester, to come out and try to explain to the public what they really stand for on this issue?
The thing is, I hope in the past, because I think we have met a couple of weeks ago, and since then I have been hoping that the students would be able to elaborate the three demands that they have announced last time with certain details and with certain steps forward. So then it can explain, I mean, they can explain to the public of what they exactly want. But the thing is like it is still quite difficult to catch the elaboration of those three demands up till now, even in 3 weeks later after. So then I would urge the students to get back into the demand and try to elaborate those demands. The more rational ways of explanation, and then it could be really explained. I'm not thinking about like convincing, but at least to explain to the public of exactly what what you want and how the public could interact, either joining or defeating, doesn't matter, but at certain point some elaboration of those demands still necessary.
Prime Minister has already expressed his uncomfortable feeling toward the gathering last night, and probably he will be inviting all the students' representatives to be meeting with him. Should they take that opportunity to explain to Prime Minister and to the public what they meant by three demands or even more demands?
The thing is, it's very generosity of the Prime Minister to initiate that. But the thing is, I'm not sure whether the students will trust him. The thing is like he is also right now a major conflicted party, one of the conflicted parties, like the major concern of the conflicted parties. So
because some of the demands were aimed at him.
99% of the demand aims at him to step down and handing the power back to the people. So then that's the first step, whether he can gain the trust from the students, at least to be facing, on the same table. So if he could build the trust for the students to go and talk to him, so then we can talk. Then we can discuss about whether it is a suitability that the student will talk to him.
Then when you say the students should come out and elaborate on the demands, right? Does it mean that we have already a clear idea as to who these student leaders are, whom that that the public should trust?
The thing is like as we discussed several times, that is this kind of demonstration is the rhetoric. And then it spreads almost everywhere, and the leaders might not be really stick to the same group. So then it's quite difficult to identify who is the leader. And then very often I believe that the leading roles of these student groups are very much collectives. So then to have a certain group of people to be the representative of all the groups, I think it's quite difficult.
But despite the fact that we may have different banners under which the demonstrations have been held, right?
Yeah.
But you think these student leaders, whoever they are, do they have a unified stand on these issues?
The thing is like because I have been following up like the request from time to time, and then of course like the issue related to the drafting of the people constitution is there for sure. Okay. The willing to have the election as soon as possible. Okay. With a free and fair atmosphere, that's very clear. That's common ground. Okay. So I think like most of the groups are really going on this, and of course like with the intimidation and human rights violation, you can see very obviously even it's not coming up with physical abuse, but they are using the legal abuse like strategic lawsuit against public participation is still applied. So then this kind of thing is clearly seen that it's still the demand that is hanging in the air.
So, but the demand for a reform of the monarchy do not necessarily have to reflect the desire of all the groups, right? It could have come from just one particular group of students.
I still don't see the direct relevance of this issue in several other groups. So then I think, but it yet to be concluded or addressed at this moment. So then we still have to wait and see of how the dynamic is moving on.
And how do you see sentiment of the opponents of the youth protest? Because they also coming out to express their uneasiness of what's really happening.
I still believe that the majority of the Thai people used to with the system of the constitutional monarchy. I'm not sure whether they are used to because they are keen on the system or because they are used to because they have been born with the system itself. But either ways, still some kind of belief that this country might need to go on with the current system. I think like the majority of people still think in this way. So then it is required some explanation, and of course it might not come from the students themselves, but I think it should come from the media and several academics who are expert in this, like the political system or social system, to come out and explain to the public that what are the extent of the criticism to the institution monarchy, or what can be done in this system. So I think it is the duty that we have to communicate to several groups of people who have different opinions right now. I still believe that the criticism of the students are not because they want to, to overthrow the system, but might be in certain extent they might require some changes or some, like you said, reform. But reform is a little bit too much. But some changes in the system, and these kind of changes, I can see that. It's the same kind of with any social institutions in this country that from time to time we have to rethink about the relationship of the social institution and people, right? For example, like we discussed about the court system. In the past, we believed that, okay, the court verdict is the end, and then the system that we established, the court, is something that we don't have, people like us don't have to involve. But at this moment, there are more requests or more demand of the people that maybe we have to reconsider that people should be really at least certain points involved with the system of the court. So I think this kind of demand is not because we don't want to have the court any longer, but we might have to get some changes, something that might be relevant to the period of time, to the generations that we have to go on and things like that. So then I think we might have to look into that dimension instead of making accusation of the bad intentions of each other.
No, but we cannot but help foreseeing a possibility of a collision course between the protesters and other sectors of the society. But as the leader of the country, what do you think the Prime Minister should do to prevent this thing from developing into a confrontation that may turn violent?
The thing is like the toleration of the government officials is a priority. The thing is like the people who are holding the power and of course armed are also most likely to use the violence against people. And even though, as I mentioned, that even we don't have the physical violence, but to use other sources of intimidation, like strategic lawsuits against public participation, or this kind of threatening, or this is already considered violence. So then it is the best recommendation that the government avoid or stop doing these things. So then at least even they don't release the air from the balloons, but they don't put more air in the balloons. So I hope that the government would be consider this as some kind of a very keen suggestion for them, and very friendly speaking. Another point is that the government, at least at this point, is not holding some part of the public. The government is a government for everyone, including those who are protesting and trying to kick the government out. The government is still their government, our government. So then the role of the government in protecting the rights of the people to preserve our safe and security is very important as well. So this is also should be the concern of the government. And moreover, the government should at least trying to explain to the public of what is the parameter of the exercises under the Constitution right now, and what is very lawful for them to protect their rights, not just to suppress them. Okay.
And what's your take of this situation? Because Thailand is also under spotlight of foreign media. The foreign journalists paying much attention on the situation as well. Should the government or what should the protester bear in mind as well of the international spotlight on Thailand?
The thing is like, even though I have a lot of relationship with international organizations and governments, but I think like let it be. The thing is like we fix our problem, and then and whatever they acknowledge would be the fact that we are trying to fix the problems ourselves. And of course, like there are some international institutions or governments concerned on the situation. It is the duty of the government and also the duty of the protesters to explain to them of what are the facts that is going on. And the thing is like when we talk about the fact is very difficult to explain if we are mixing the fact with some source of our own perceptions with certain level of self-interpretation. So then we have to, when we explain to the international world or international partners, we should focus on really the fact what is going on. But what we make from the interpretation, we have to, bear in mind that we should be cautious on that.
So if a dialogue between the Prime Minister and the student protesters does materialize, what do you think should be the outcome of this meeting? I'm sure that the Prime Minister is not going to say, I'm going to resign as you want.
The thing is like, at the beginning, I still don't believe that it's going to happen very soon. But of course, it would be good if it could happen. And the thing is like when, and then if this kind of discussion or the dialogue between the government and the representatives of the protesters going on. I don't think that it should be only one time. There might be a lot of levels and several discussions or the dialogue, because to build trust, to make rational recommendations and to address difficult issues or sensitive issues also very important, and it requires so much time, especially when there are a lot of stakeholders in this conflict. So then the timing is also very important.
And you're optimistic, right? That things will not turn violent.
At this point, I believe that the students would not be the one who ignites the violence, because this kind, not because I know them personally, but because the characteristic of the demonstration is a short period of time. I don't call it flash mob, but it's a kind of a short period demonstration. So then it is very difficult to how you call that, to initiate any violence action. And of course, like the students who comes, they have certain purpose to communicate, and then they go back home. So then the violence from the students is less likely. But the thing is, like as I concerned, that the government officials who are still armed and still authorized and a bit more powerful should be really concerned on their own toleration, give a little bit more elasticity to their own toleration.
Yeah. Dialogue seems to be the best solution at this very juncture, at least to open up space for discussion.
To leave the space is also one of very important, but if you can have the dialogue, it would be a great issue. But the thing is, like apart from the dialogue, there are so many peaceful mechanisms that can carry on. But at this particular moment, I still don't see the channels of initiating those tools or mechanisms yet. But if there are certain period of time when there are more rational way of expression, both from the government and from the demonstrators. So at this certain point, there are many other mechanisms that could be initiated.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ajahn Ekapan, for joining us.
All right.
So that's how Dr. Ekapan Pintawanit briefed the situation of youth protest and what the government and public official should try to do in order to cope with the situation. And thank you very much for watching. That is Thai PBS World Tonight, and we'll be back with Tan Lok with Thai PBS World at 8 p.m. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching.